I'll begin with my questioning. And I just want to begin because there's two men who served on the front lines of law enforcement, probably had the same experience with me. Chief Jackson, I think you would agree with Chief Cook. The men and women that served, the 1,000+ police officers I watched every day, some of the bravest people I know, none of them that I knew of were going out and saying, I'm going to racially, disparately charge marijuana. That just does, I don't see that happening. Did you see that happening?
No, we've evolved. You don't see it happen as much as you did 30 years ago.
Let me get to my question then. So we I think three of us would agree that these men and women are some of the bravest folk. I've seen them run into buildings with a shooting going on, no situational awareness to save lives.
Absolutely.
But yet we still have these facts. Marijuana usage in the United States of America is generally equal amongst the races. Yet African Americans are going to prison, Latinos are going to prison or being arrested and charged with a great degree more. How do you jive what I agree with Mr. Cook saying, that this is not overt racism? How do you jive that then? How do you account for the fact that there's that disparity that goes on when it comes to marijuana enforcement?
I think it's an economy in many poor cities in America, so it's more pronounced amongst minorities. They don't have access to Fortune 500 companies. Many of them can't get good legally paying jobs. So
I would pause there because I want to turn to the doctor because I know you've researched it. So my experience, again, I went to Stanford, Yale, saw a lot of marijuana usage, different enforced. Nobody's doing raids in college campuses. Doctor, you've heard that what Chief Jackson said, Dr. Jackson said. What would you say that counts for it?
You know, I think that there are differences in when we're thinking about the application of race, and no individual, I think, within law enforcement, I agree with both you and Mr. Cook, is coming in with, or at least the vast majority of them, not coming in with overt racist sense. But the system, right, the distribution of money, power, and resources into the community, and the burden or the over-distribution of police resources within communities of color is what's resulting in that. Where the police are, they have a job, they're going to do what it is that they're going to do. They're not as more, densely distributed within white communities, because that would create problems, and you guys as senators would receive lots of calls.
Right, and the consequences, I've seen this, again, I agree with, Mr. Cook said a lot of things that I firmly agree with. This is not a federal prosecutors coming in, but in the station house, when a kid has been arrested with a lot of drugs, I know in my neighborhood, where I grew up in a relatively white privileged area, there's station house adjustments, a lot of things, but the kids from lower income communities, what happens?
They go to jail. They don't have the advocates, the community-based resources, the influence to be able to change the station house sort of environment. They just receive the cold, hard justice of the criminal justice system.
And then how do you account for the 13% longer sentences for the same crime when you control for other factors?
I think that's what we're talking about. It's a systematic racist problem, right? So the system, from the officer on the ground all the way up through the prosecutor, all the way up through the judge.
You're not accusing judges, you're not accusing officers of being overtly racist, you're saying?
No, this is the system and the way it's designed.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get at. Now, can you talk, because again, Mr. Berenson's had a lot of experience and an expert in this area. Obviously, he's testifying before Congress. You as a doctor, you said you studied the mental health impact of people who use marijuana. You wrote a paper entitled Prioritizing Mental Health in the Emerging Market. Could you help me understand that is there a causal link that exists between marijuana usage and mental health disorders?
There is no causal link between mental health, cannabis use and mental health disorders. Now, individuals who have predilection towards mental health disorders, if they so happen to use cannabis, could have an exacerbation or a incidence of those mental health disorders occurring. But it's not the opposite way. It's not where it doesn't start with the cannabis. It starts with the individual and their their family history, their environment and the way they grew up, and all those other factors which may lead them to actually have an emerging mental health disorder.
So then let me get to the core question, then I'll turn to Senator Cotton. So then help me understand why people would be safer, why we could possibly see less crime, like the thing I've entered in for the record, why we would address more equity in law enforcement if we did not have a patchwork of federal law, of state laws, but instead had a federal law like one of the ones under consideration. Could you explain that to me?
Sure.
Why the public is better off in terms of a safety standpoint and equity in law enforcement?
We'd have clarity. right? There's, as the chief described, right, his own officers are confused about this matter, right? We'd have clarity, we'd have the ability to engage as a full society using all the tools that we have within government to be able to provide safe, tested, regulated cannabis. Mr. Cook reported that the cartels are, taking advantage of the system, but that's because we don't have clarity. If we had clarity, we would be able to identify the operators within the system who are following the law and those that are not following the law, and be able to go after those that are not following the law in order to be able to bring them into compliance. What we need at this point in time is not a patchwork of law, but clarity from the federal government regarding at least the criminal status of cannabis, and allow the states to be able to effectively regulate it on the ground.
And that's because it was a throwaway joke, but I want to get to the bottom of this also. This illegal business is able to take advantage of this patchwork of laws, and the fact that there are certain tax write-offs that you can apply for, that other businesses can, to get more of a fair legal playing field.
Sure.
So it's not like people are asking for subsidies for their marijuana business.
Absolutely not.
They're asking for a fair economic playing field, treated like other businesses. They would
Correct.
get a lot of the same tax write-offs that other businesses would get, and would make them be able to, again, outcompete this illegal market and eventually put it further and further into the rearview mirror.
Right. The reason why there's a gap between the illicit market and the regulated market is because the regulated market is not able to, subscribe to the normal economics of capitalism and commerce, right? So therefore, the illegal market, is able to operate with impunity in a lot of places, and so this creates this dichotomy, and ultimately drives up the price of at the consumer level, causing people to prefer to maintain the illegal market.
Okay, gentlemen, Senator Cotton, then myself, then you're free to go.
All right, thanks.